What if the worst thing that ever happened to you convinced you that you were unlovable forever? Iris believes she knows the answer to that question. She lives it every single day. 4 years ago, she was a different person, confident, radiant, surrounded by friends, deeply in love, studying art in college with dreams bigger than the sky. But 4 years ago, a drunk driver ran a red light and turned her entire world into a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The collision was head-on. Metal crushed metal. Glass shattered into 1,000 pieces. And when Iris finally opened her eyes in that hospital bed weeks later, she didn't recognize the face staring back at her from the reflection in the window. The left side of her face bore scars that no amount of surgery could completely erase. Burns that twisted across her cheek, lacerations that cut through her jawline, marks that wrapped partially around her eye like cruel reminders that some things, once broken, can never be put back together the same way. But the physical scars, those weren't even the worst part. The worst part was watching her boyfriend Tyler walk into that hospital room, his eyes landing on her face, and seeing something die in his expression. He tried to hide it, tried to smile, tried to say the right things, but Iris saw the truth in the way he couldn't hold her gaze, the way his hand trembled when he touched hers, the way he made excuses to leave earlier and earlier each visit until finally he stopped coming altogether. 2 months later, he ended their 3-year relationship over the phone, couldn't even face her. To do it, mumbling something about needing space and not being strong enough for this. Translation? He couldn't love someone who looked like her anymore. Her friends weren't much better. Oh, they tried at first, sent flowers, posted supportive messages. But slowly, quietly, they disappeared like morning fog under harsh sunlight. Some said Iris had become too withdrawn, but Iris knew the truth. They couldn't handle looking at her, couldn't handle the discomfort of her new face disrupting their perfect Instagram-worthy lives. So Iris did the only thing that made sense. She vanished. Now, at 26 years old, she exists more than she lives. Her apartment is a carefully constructed fortress, curtains permanently drawn to block out the world, mirrors covered with sheets because she can't bear to see her own reflection, old photographs of her former self hidden away in boxes she'll never open. She works as a freelance graphic designer, completing her degree online after the accident, creating beautiful things from behind a screen where no one has to see the artist behind the art. She leaves her apartment maybe once a week, and when she does, she's covered. Oversized hoodie pulled low over her face, scarf wrapped around her jaw and mouth, large sunglasses hiding her eyes even on cloudy days. Head down, shoulders hunched, moving through the world like a ghost, hoping desperately that no one will notice her, terrified of the moment when someone inevitably does. The only place Iris feels remotely human is online. She runs an anonymous art blog where she posts her graphic design work. Intricate illustrations, emotional pieces, designs that seem to bleed feeling onto the screen. Her followers love her work. They leave comments calling her talented, calling her inspiring, calling her a genius. And it's bittersweet because they're praising her for the one thing about herself she can still stand, her art, while having no idea that the person creating it believes she's fundamentally broken and unlovable. Late at night, Iris watches romantic movies and cries. She sees couples walking hand in hand through the park outside her window and feels something twist painfully in her chest, a mixture of longing so intense it physically hurts and hopelessness so deep it threatens to swallow her whole. She wants connection. God, does she want it? Wants someone to see her, really see her, wants to be touched with tenderness instead of pity, wants to believe that maybe, just maybe, love isn't something that ended for her in that hospital room 4 years ago. But wanting something and believing you deserve it are two entirely different things. And Iris stopped believing in her own worthiness the day Tyler couldn't look her in the eye. Everything changes on an ordinary Tuesday when Iris's laptop, her lifeline, her connection to work, her shield against the world, crashes spectacularly. She has a major client project due in 48 hours. She needs reliable Wi-Fi, and she needs it now. Her apartment internet is too slow, the library is too crowded, too many people, too many stairs. But there's one place, a small coffee shop she's walked past 100 times called the Corner Brew that might work. So on Saturday morning, against every screaming instinct in her body, Iris walks through that coffee shop door. The place is perfect. Quiet, cozy, big windows letting in soft morning light, gentle acoustic music playing low. Only a handful of people scattered throughout. She orders chamomile tea with a whispered voice, keeps her eyes down as the barista takes her money, and then retreats to the corner table furthest from everyone else. Hoodie up, scarf secure, sunglasses firmly in place despite being indoors. Her laptop opens, her project loads, and for a moment, just a moment, she breathes. But she feels it before she sees it, that sensation of being watched. Her body tenses, her hands still on the keyboard, and when she risks the briefest glance across the room, she sees him, a man, maybe late 20s, sitting by the window with a book and a camera on the table beside him. Dark hair, kind eyes, and he's looking at her, not staring exactly, more like observing, but it's enough to make Iris's heart hammer against her ribs. She turns away immediately, hides further behind her laptop screen, silently begging him not to approach, not to speak, not to see her. He doesn't approach. He goes back to his book. And somehow, that's almost worse, because it means he'll be there, in her peripheral vision, a reminder that she's sharing space with another human being. His name is Caleb, though Iris doesn't know that yet. What she also doesn't know is that Caleb comes to this coffee shop every Saturday morning as part of his ritual. He's a physical therapist who works with trauma survivors, teaching them to reclaim their bodies after accidents and injuries have stolen their sense of safety. He chose this profession because of his younger sister Hannah, who was born with a condition that left her partially paralyzed, who spent her whole life facing stares and cruelty and pity, but who taught Caleb that a person's worth has absolutely nothing to do with their physical form. Hannah died 6 years ago, and Caleb has spent every day since trying to honor her memory by seeing people the way she taught him to see them, wholly, completely beyond the surface. So when Caleb notices the woman in the corner, bundled up like she's hiding from the world itself, he doesn't see a curiosity or a mystery to solve. He sees someone in pain, someone who's built walls so high that even sitting in a public space requires armor. He recognizes that posture, the hunched shoulders, the averted gaze, the body language screaming, "Please don't perceive me," because he's seen it in his patients 1,000 times. And so, with the patience that defines him, he simply lets her be. Week after week, they exist in the same space. Iris keeps coming back even though her laptop is fixed, even though she could work from home again. Something about this place, this routine, makes her feel almost normal. And Caleb keeps showing up for his Saturday morning ritual, occasionally glancing at the woman in the corner who's slowly, imperceptibly lowering her guard. The scarf drops first, just slightly. Then the sunglasses come off for brief moments, when she thinks no one's looking. Until one Saturday morning when Iris reaches for her tea and accidentally knocks her sketchbook off the table instead. So here's what I want you to think about. What happens when someone sees you, really sees you, and doesn't look away? Can one moment of genuine human connection start to crack open a heart that's been locked shut by trauma and shame? Because what comes next will change everything Iris thought she knew about herself, about love, and about whether someone as broken as she believes herself to be could ever deserve to be whole. Again, the sketchbook hits the ground, and Iris's entire world fractures in that single second. Pages scatter across the wooden floor like fallen leaves, her most private work suddenly exposed to the world she spent 4 years hiding from. Her heart stops, her breath catches, and in that frozen moment of pure panic, she realizes that every drawing, every illustration, every piece of her soul she's poured onto those pages is now visible to anyone who cares to look. And someone is looking. The man by the window. Caleb is already moving toward her. "No," Iris whispers, dropping to her knees, hands trembling as she scrambles to gather the pages. "No, no, no, please. Let me help you." His voice is gentle, warm, completely devoid of pity or awkwardness. And before Iris can protest again, he's kneeling beside her, carefully picking up her drawings with the kind of reverence you'd show ancient manuscripts. Iris keeps her head down, hair falling forward like a curtain, scarf pulled up despite having lowered it moments before. Her fingers fumble with the pages, crumpling some in her desperate haste to hide them away. But Caleb isn't rushing. He's actually looking at her work, really looking, and when he speaks again, there's genuine awe in his voice. These are incredible. Iris freezes. Nobody sees her work in person. Nobody connects the art to the artist. That's the whole point of anonymity. Talent without a face, beauty without context. Thanks, she manages, voice tight and strangled. Can I have them back, please? He hands them over immediately, but something has shifted in the air between them. Something fragile and terrifying and impossibly hopeful all at once. Caleb settles back on his heels, making no move to invade her space, but not leaving either. I'm Caleb, by the way. I've seen you here before. You're really talented. And this is the moment. This is where Iris has to make a choice. Flee like every instinct is screaming at her to do, or stay in this uncomfortable, vulnerable space just a few seconds longer. She looks up. Just briefly, just a flash of her face before she turns away again, but it's enough. Enough for Caleb to see the scars that have defined her existence for 4 years. Enough for her to see his reaction. Except there isn't one. No shock widening his eyes, no uncomfortable clearing of his throat, no subtle flinch or that horrible pitying softness people get when they're trying to be kind about something ugly. He just smiles. Gentle, real, like she's a person he's meeting, not a tragedy he's witnessing. I'm a photographer, Caleb continues, as if the last 10 seconds didn't just rewrite everything Iris thought she knew about human nature. I'd love to see more of your work sometime, if you're comfortable sharing. Why? The word comes out defensive, sharp-edged with years of learned suspicion. Why would anyone want to see more? Why would anyone want anything from her except to satisfy their morbid curiosity or feel better about themselves by being nice to someone broken? Caleb doesn't seem offended by her tone. If anything, he looks like he understands exactly where the question comes from. Because real art comes from real emotion. And yours clearly does. Iris doesn't know what to say to that. Doesn't know how to process someone looking at her work instead of her face, seeing her talent instead of her tragedy. So she does what she's become an expert at. She mumbles something non-committal, gathers her things with shaking hands and escapes. Out the door. Down the street. Back to her fortress apartment where the world can't touch her, and kindness can't confuse her, and hope can't hurt her when it inevitably turns out to be false. But here's the thing about hope. Once it plants itself in your chest, it's nearly impossible to uproot completely. The next Saturday, Iris tells herself she's not going back to the coffee shop. She has Wi-Fi at home now. She doesn't need the corner brew. She doesn't need the risk of running into Caleb again, of facing whatever complicated feelings his simple kindness stirred up inside her. She's safer alone. She's always been safer alone. But Saturday morning comes, and Iris finds herself standing outside the corner brew at exactly 9:15, the same time she's arrived for weeks. Her hand is on the door. Her reflection stares back at her from the glass. Hoodie, scarf, sunglasses, armor firmly in place. And she thinks about turning around. Thinks about running. Thinks about all the ways this could go wrong. She goes inside anyway. Caleb is there, at his usual table by the window, and when he sees her, his face lights up with a smile so genuine it makes Iris's chest ache. He doesn't wave or call out or do anything that would draw attention. He just nods, a small acknowledgement that she came back, and returns to his book, giving her space, giving her choice. And somehow that makes all the difference. Over the next 6 weeks, something remarkable happens. Something Iris thought impossible. A friendship begins to grow. It starts small. Shared glances, brief nods of greeting, the comfortable silence of two people existing in the same space without expectation. Then one Saturday, Caleb asks if he can sit at her table because the coffee shop is unusually crowded. Iris's immediate instinct is to say no, to protect her corner, her safety zone. But she hears herself say okay instead, and suddenly Caleb is across from her, pulling out his laptop, settling in like this is the most natural thing in the world. They don't talk much that first shared morning. But Iris notices things, notices how Caleb doesn't stare at her, doesn't let his eyes linger on her scars, doesn't treat her like she's made of glass. He makes a joke about his terrible coffee shop loyalty program punch card that's been in his wallet for 2 years. Iris surprises herself by laughing, actually laughing, a sound she hasn't heard from her own throat in so long it feels foreign. The Saturday after that, they talk about books. The Saturday after that, about the city's best hidden spots. And slowly, degree by careful degree, Iris begins to lower her walls. The scarf comes down first, just around Caleb, just at their table. She tells herself it's because the coffee shop is warm, because the fabric is irritating her skin, because it doesn't matter anyway since he's already seen her face. But the truth she's not quite ready to admit, is that she's testing him, waiting for the moment his kindness reveals itself as performance, as pity, as something with an expiration date. That moment never comes. Instead, Caleb brings a portfolio of his photography one morning, a thick leather binder filled with images that make Iris's breath catch. They're not what she expected, no pristine landscapes or perfect portraits. Instead, she's looking at beauty in places most people would overlook completely. Cracked pottery with flowers growing through the breaks, weathered hands holding worn tools, old buildings with peeling paint, revealing layers of color underneath, wildflowers pushing through concrete sidewalks. Everything imperfect, everything real, everything surviving. Why do you photograph broken things? Iris asks quietly, fingers tracing the edge of an image showing a shattered mirror reflecting a sunset. Caleb looks up from his coffee, and there's something in his eyes, a depth, a history, a carefully considered philosophy about life and beauty and worth. I don't see them as broken, he says simply. I see them as real, as beautiful because of what they've survived, not in spite of it. The words hit Iris like a physical blow. She blinks rapidly, fighting back tears that threaten to spill over. Most people don't see it that way. Most people are afraid to look past the surface. Caleb's gaze finds hers and holds it, not in challenge, but in invitation. But the surface is the least interesting part, and there it is. The moment when Iris realizes that this man, this stranger who became a friend without her permission, actually means what he says, that his kindness isn't charity, that his acceptance isn't performance, that maybe, just maybe, he actually sees something in her worth seeing beyond the scars that have defined her for so long. For the first time in 4 years, Iris feels seen, not as a victim, not as inspiration porn, not as a cautionary tale or a before and after tragedy, just as Iris, just as herself, just as someone who matters beyond what her face looks like. But here's the question that keeps Iris awake that night, staring at her ceiling in the darkness. What happens when you start to believe someone sees you as worthy, but you still can't see yourself that way? Can someone else's perception of your value actually change how you value yourself, or does healing have to come from somewhere deeper? The weeks fold into months, and Iris finds herself transforming in ways both terrifying and exhilarating. She stops wearing the sunglasses around Caleb entirely. Her hoodie stays on, but pushed back enough that her face is visible, scars and all. She starts arriving earlier to the coffee shop and leaving later. She shares her art blog with Caleb, the first person in 4 years to connect her online persona with her physical self, and watches nervously as he scrolls through her work, his expression growing more impressed with each piece. Your followers have no idea how lucky they are, he tells her, to experience your art without knowing the artist. They're missing the whole story. Maybe that's better, Iris replies, old defenses rising automatically. Maybe the art should speak for itself. Art always speaks for itself, Caleb counters gently. But the artist's story adds layers of meaning that make the art richer. You survived something terrible, Iris. Your art is powerful because of everything you've lived through, everything you've felt, everything you've overcome. That's not something to hide. That's your superpower. Iris wants to believe him. God, does she want to believe him? But belief requires trust, and trust requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is the thing that destroyed her the last time she offered it to someone who promised to love her forever. Around this time, Iris receives an email that changes everything. A gallery owner has been following her anonymous blog and wants to feature her work in an upcoming show. A major opportunity that could launch her career beyond freelance projects into genuine artistic recognition. The prestige, the exposure, the validation she's craved since she was a college student with infinite dreams. There's just one catch. She has to appear at the opening reception. In person, visible, vulnerable. Iris stares at the email for 3 days straight, cursor hovering over delete more times than she can count. She hasn't been to a public event since before the accident, hasn't stood in a room full of strangers who might stare, might whisper, might see her scars before they see her art. The thought alone makes her nauseous with anxiety. She tells Caleb about the offer during their next coffee shop meeting, expecting him to immediately push her to do it, to give her some motivational speech about facing fears and seizing opportunities. But Caleb surprises her. He always surprises her. "What do you want to do?" he asks instead. "I want to say no," Iris admits. "I want to decline politely and keep hiding behind my anonymous account where nobody has to know what I look like." "Okay," Caleb says simply. "Then say no." Iris blinks. "You're not going to try to convince me otherwise. Why would I? It's your art, your career, your life. I'll support whatever decision you make." He pauses, then adds carefully, "But can I ask you something? Are you saying no because you genuinely don't want this opportunity, or are you saying no because you're afraid of what might happen if you take it?" The question hangs in the air between them, heavy with implication, and Iris realizes she doesn't have an answer. Or rather, she has an answer she doesn't want to admit. Because the truth is, she wants this desperately, wants recognition, wants success, wants to step out of the shadows and claim her place in the world as an artist. But wanting something and believing you deserve it are two different battles, and Iris has been losing the second one for 4 years straight. "I don't know," she whispers finally. "I don't know what I want anymore." Caleb reaches across the table and does something he's never done before. He takes her hand. His palm is warm against her cold fingers, his touch gentle but firm, grounding her in the moment. "Then don't decide today. Think about it, really think about it. And whatever you choose, I'm here. Okay?" Iris nods, not trusting her voice, overwhelmed by the simple act of being touched with tenderness instead of pity. And that night, alone in her apartment, she finds herself seriously considering the impossible. But what Iris doesn't know yet is that considering the impossible and actually doing it are separated by a chasm so wide it might just swallow her whole. Because the closer she gets to Caleb, the closer she gets to genuine connection, the louder that voice in her head becomes. The voice that sounds suspiciously like Tyler, like her former friends, like every person who ever made her feel less than human because of what her face looks like now. The shift happens gradually, then all at once. Caleb asks Iris on an actual date, not coffee at their usual table, but dinner at a real restaurant, with tablecloths and candles, and the kind of atmosphere that screams romance. And Iris, riding a wave of cautious hope she's been building for months, says yes before fear can override her courage. Caleb chooses the restaurant carefully, a small Italian place tucked away on a quiet street, intimate without being overwhelming, romantic without being intimidating. When Iris arrives, he's already there, standing from the table with a smile that makes her heart do complicated things in her chest. He's dressed up, button-down shirt, dark jeans, hair actually combed instead of his usual casual mess. And he looks at her like she's the most beautiful woman he's ever seen, scars and all. The evening unfolds like something out of the romantic movies Iris used to watch and cry over. They talk about everything and nothing, childhood memories, worst jobs ever held, dreams they've abandoned, and dreams they're still chasing. Caleb tells her about Hannah, really tells her, sharing stories of his sister that make Iris laugh and ache in equal measure. And for the first time, Iris finds herself talking about her life before the accident, without the usual crushing weight of grief for the person she used to be. When Caleb makes a terrible pun about pasta, Iris laughs so hard she nearly chokes on her wine. A real, genuine, from-the-belly laugh that feels like coming home to herself. And when he reaches across the table to take her hand, threading their fingers together in a gesture so natural it seems inevitable. Iris realizes with terrifying clarity that she's falling in love with this man, which makes what happens next so much worse. They're walking back to Iris's apartment, hands still intertwined, the city lights casting long shadows on the sidewalk. Caleb is telling a story about a patient who learned to walk again and then immediately signed up for a marathon, and Iris is smiling, genuinely smiling, feeling more alive than she has in years. And then Caleb stops walking, turns to face her, looks at her with an intensity that steals the breath from her lungs. "Iris," he says softly, "I need you to know something. I care about you. A lot. More than I've cared about anyone in a really long time." Iris's heart is hammering so hard, she's sure he can hear it. This is it. This is the moment she's been simultaneously hoping for and dreading. The moment when everything becomes real, when the possibility of love transforms into the reality of it, when she has to decide if she's brave enough to let someone in completely. Caleb leans in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, to stop this before it starts. His hand comes up to cup her cheek, the scarred side deliberately, purposefully, and Iris feels tears spring to her eyes at the tenderness of the gesture. But then something breaks inside her. Some fundamental belief that she's not worthy of this, that it's too good to be true, that he can't possibly really want her when he could have anyone else. The voice of Tyler echoes in her head. "I can't handle this." The memory of her friends' abandoned texts. The lifetime of social programming that says beauty equals worth and scars equal damaged goods. Iris jerks backward, breaking the moment like glass shattering. "Wait, stop, I can't." The words tumble out panicked and desperate. "You don't really know me. You don't know what happened. You don't know what you're getting into." Caleb's hand drops, confusion and concern crossing his face. "Iris, what are you talking about?" "I do know you. I've been getting to know you for months." "No." Iris is backing away now, arms wrapping around herself protectively. "You know the version of me that exists in that coffee shop. You don't know the me who can't look in mirrors, who has panic attacks in grocery stores, who hasn't had a real relationship or friendship in 4 years because everyone I loved left when they saw what I really looked like. You don't know how broken I am." "You're not broken." "Yes, I am." The words rip out of her throat, raw and jagged. "I'm broken and ugly and damaged, and I don't know why you're pretending otherwise, but it's not fair. It's not fair to make me hope when I know how this ends. I know what happens when people really see me. They leave. Everyone leaves." And before Caleb can respond, before he can say whatever kind words he's planning to say that Iris won't let herself believe, she turns and runs. Literally runs back to her apartment building, up the stairs, through her door, sliding the locks home with shaking hands. She collapses against the door and sobs, great heaving cries that tear through her chest like she's grieving all over again. Grieving the accident, grieving Tyler's betrayal, grieving the future she just destroyed by being too afraid to believe in it. Her phone buzzes. Once, twice, 10 times. Text messages from Caleb. "Please, talk to me. I'm sorry if I moved too fast. You're not broken, Iris. Please believe me. I'm here whenever you're ready." She doesn't respond, doesn't read beyond the first line of each message, just sits in her darkened apartment, surrounded by covered mirrors and drawn curtains and all the protective barriers she's built, wondering how she let herself forget, even for a moment, that this was always how it would end, with her alone and him gone, because people like her don't get fairy tale endings. So let me ask you this. When trauma has taught you that vulnerability equals pain, when past rejection has become your proof that you're unlovable, how do you learn to trust again? How do you distinguish between the voice of fear trying to protect you and the voice of fear trying to destroy you? Because right now, Iris can't tell the difference, and that confusion is about to cost her everything she didn't know she could have. 2 weeks pass, and Iris doesn't return to the corner brew. She stops posting on her art blog. She ignores Caleb's messages until they finally stop coming. She declines the gallery opportunity with a terse email claiming scheduling conflicts. And she retreats into the isolated existence she maintained for 4 years before Caleb walked into her life. telling herself it's safer this way, better this way, the only way someone like her can survive. But isolation that once felt protective now feels suffocating. Her apartment is too quiet. Her work is too hollow. And every time she tries to create something new, all her art comes out dark and lonely and screaming with the kind of pain you can't hide behind technique. One night, Iris finds herself scrolling through old messages from Caleb, reading his words over and over, like they're in a language she's trying to translate. "You're not broken. I see you. I'm here whenever you're ready." And she realizes with devastating clarity that she's done to him exactly what Tyler did to her. She's rejected someone based on fear instead of truth, pushed away connection because intimacy requires vulnerability, chosen loneliness because it's familiar even though it's killing her slowly. But acknowledging the problem and fixing it are two very different things. Because Iris doesn't know how to fix this, doesn't know how to go back to Caleb and say, "I'm sorry I ran, I'm sorry I didn't believe you, I'm sorry I'm too damaged to accept love when it's offered." Doesn't know how to be brave enough to try again when the first attempt nearly broke her. Her phone rings. It's her mother calling for their monthly obligatory check-in. Iris almost doesn't answer, but loneliness makes her weak. "Hi, Mom." "Iris, sweetheart, you sound terrible. What's wrong?" And maybe it's the isolation or the heartbreak or the fact that Iris has reached some kind of emotional rock bottom, but she finds herself actually telling her mother the truth. About the coffee shop, about Caleb, about the friendship that became something more, about the gallery opportunity, about how she ran from all of it because she was too afraid to believe she deserved good things. Her mother is quiet for a long moment. Then, "Baby girl, you know what your father used to say? That the only way to guarantee failure is to never try. You've been so focused on protecting yourself from pain that you've forgotten how to let in joy. But what if I let him in and he leaves anyway?" Iris whispers, voicing her deepest fear. "What if I try and I'm still not enough? Then you'll survive, like you've survived everything else," her mother says firmly. "But sweetheart, what if you try and you are enough? What if you're rejecting love not because you're unworthy but because you're terrified? There's a big difference between protecting your heart and strangling it." After they hang up, Iris sits in silence, really sits with her mother's words. And she realizes that she's been operating from the belief that Tyler's rejection was proof of her unworthiness, when maybe, just maybe, it was only proof that Tyler was too shallow to see beyond surface, that her friends leaving wasn't evidence that she was unlovable, but that they weren't capable of the kind of deep connection that survives hardship. Caleb has never treated her like Tyler did, never looked at her with discomfort or pity, never made her feel like she was anything less than fully human, fully worthy, fully deserving of love and respect. And she repaid that gift by assuming the worst, by projecting her trauma onto him, by running before he could prove her wrong about everything she believed about herself. Which brings us to the question that changes everything. What if the person you're really running from isn't the people who might hurt you, but the terrifying possibility that you might actually deserve to be loved exactly as you are? Iris makes a decision. She's going to find Caleb. She's going to apologize. She's going to be honest, brutally, vulnerably honest, about her fears and her trauma and all the ways she's broken. And then she's going to let him decide if she's worth the effort, instead of making that decision for him. But when Iris finally gathers her courage and shows up at the corner brew the following Saturday, her heart in her throat, an apology prepared, hope and terror warring in her chest, Caleb isn't there. She waits an hour, 2 hours. He doesn't come. The barista, who's seen them together dozens of times, mentions casually, "If you're looking for Caleb, he hasn't been in for a couple weeks. Hope everything's okay." And Iris realizes with sinking horror that she's waited too long, that her silence has said everything she was too afraid to say out loud, that maybe Caleb finally gave up on her, moved on, decided she wasn't worth the exhaustion of waiting for someone who couldn't accept love when it was offered freely. She goes to his apartment, the address she remembers from the one time he mentioned it. But when she knocks, a neighbor opens their door instead and tells her that Caleb left town for a work conference, won't be back for another week. A week. 7 more days of this agony, this uncertainty, this not knowing if she's destroyed the best thing that's happened to her in 4 years. Iris returns to her apartment and does something she hasn't done since the accident. She removes all the coverings from her mirrors, every single one. And she forces herself to look, really look, at her scars, at her face, at the woman staring back at her with red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained cheeks. "Who are you?" she asks her reflection. "Are you the scared girl who let one person's rejection define her worth? Or are you the survivor who created beauty from pain, who rebuilt a life from ruins, who deserves love, not despite her scars, but because of everything she's survived?" The answer doesn't come immediately, but Iris keeps looking, keeps searching, keeps trying to see herself the way Caleb sees her, as whole, as worthy, as beautiful in all the ways that actually matter. And in that moment of brutal self-examination, Iris makes another decision. Whether Caleb comes back or not, whether he forgives her or not, whether they get a second chance or not, she's going to start living again, really living, not hiding, not surviving, not just existing in the spaces between fears. She opens her laptop and writes an email to the gallery owner. "I'd like to discuss the exhibition, if the offer still stands." She calls her mother back. "I think I'm ready to come visit for a few days." She posts on her art blog for the first time in weeks. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're terrified and try anyway. And then she waits. For Caleb to return. For the gallery to respond. For her own heart to decide if it's strong enough to risk breaking again. Because here's the truth that Iris is finally starting to understand. Healing isn't about erasing your scars or pretending your trauma never happened. It's about deciding that your past pain doesn't get to write your future story. It's about choosing courage over comfort, vulnerability over safety, hope over the crushing weight of fear. But understanding something intellectually and actually living it, actually taking that leap of faith when every instinct screams at you to stay small and hidden, that's the difference between surviving and truly being alive. The week passes like years. Every day, Iris checks her phone obsessively. Every night she lies awake wondering if she's too late, if some mistakes can't be unmade, if she's lost her chance at the kind of love that sees past surfaces and into souls. But she doesn't stop moving forward. She creates new art, raw, honest pieces about survival and vulnerability and the courage it takes to let people see you. She schedules the gallery meeting. She books a flight to visit her parents. She starts therapy, finally, after 4 years of telling herself she could handle everything alone. And on Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after Caleb failed to show up at the coffee shop, Iris goes back to the corner brew one more time. Not because she expects him to be there, but because she needs to prove to herself that she can exist in that space without hiding, without armor, without shame. She orders her tea, takes her usual corner table, and for the first time in 4 years, she doesn't pull up her hoodie or adjust her scarf or hide behind sunglasses. She sits there, scars visible, head high, and opens her sketchbook to draw. The door chimes. Iris doesn't look up. Someone orders coffee. The barista laughs at something. Normal coffee shop sounds, normal Saturday morning. And then a voice, familiar and warm and everything she's been desperately missing for 2 weeks. "Is this seat taken?" Iris's head snaps up so fast her neck cracks. And there he is, Caleb, standing next to her table with 2 cups of coffee and an expression that's equal parts cautious and hopeful, like he's not sure if she'll tell him to leave or finally let him stay. "Caleb," she breathes, his name a prayer and an apology and a question all at once. "Hi," he says simply. And then, with the patience that defines him, with the kindness that first made her believe in the possibility of healing, "Can we talk?" And everything, absolutely everything, hangs on what Iris says next. "Yes," Iris whispers, and in that single word, she's answering far more than just whether Caleb can sit down. She's answering the question of whether she's brave enough to try. Again, whether she believes she deserves a second chance, whether love is worth the terrifying risk of being seen completely. Caleb sits across from her, setting down both coffee cups, one black for him, one with cream and honey for her because of course he remembers how she takes her tea, even though she ordered coffee exactly once, months ago. The gesture is so thoughtful, so deliberate, that Iris feels tears prick her eyes before either of them has said anything substantial. "I'm sorry," they both say simultaneously, then pause, surprised. A ghost of a smile touches Caleb's lips, despite the tension radiating between them. "You first," Iris says quickly, because she needs to hear whatever he's going to say before she loses her nerve completely. Caleb leans forward, hands wrapped around his coffee cup, like he needs something to anchor him. "I'm sorry for pushing too fast, for trying to kiss you before you were ready. I got caught up in my own feelings and didn't stop to consider that you might need more time, more space, more—" "No." Iris cuts him off, shaking her head firmly. "No, Caleb, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who ran. I'm the one who projected my trauma onto you and assumed you'd hurt me the way Tyler did. I'm the one who spent 2 weeks realizing that the only person who's been telling me I'm unlovable is me." Her voice cracks on the last word, but she pushes forward because this is too important to hide behind composure. "You've never treated me as anything less than worthy, and I repaid that by running away the second things got real." Caleb's expression softens with something that looks like relief mixed with residual hurt. "I won't lie, when you ran it stung. Not because I felt rejected, but because I hated that you believed so little in your own worth that you couldn't imagine someone genuinely caring about you." "I know," Iris whispers. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I let fear make my decisions instead of trust. I let Tyler's voice in my head drown out everything you've shown me through your actions. Where were you?" The question escapes before Iris can stop it. "Last week, I came here looking for you. Work conference," Caleb explains. "It was planned months ago, but the timing—" He runs a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I was going to tell you about it that night, the night of our date, but then everything fell apart, and I didn't know if you'd even want to hear from me, so I left you alone, gave you space, hoped you'd reach out when you were ready. I was terrified you'd given up on me," Iris admits quietly. Caleb's hand moves across the table, palm up, an invitation rather than a demand. Iris looks at his outstretched hand for a long moment. This man who has shown her nothing but patience and kindness, who has never asked her to be anything other than herself, who sees beauty in broken things because he understands that survival itself is beautiful. And slowly, carefully, she places her hand in his. "I meant what I said that night," Caleb tells her, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "I care about you. That hasn't changed. But Iris, I need you to understand something. I can't make you believe you're worthy. I can show you how I see you. I can treat you with the respect and care you deserve, but the work of actually accepting that, of believing it in your bones, that has to come from you." The words hit like a revelation because Iris knows he's right. She's been waiting for external validation to fix her internal wounds, expecting Caleb's love to heal damage that predates him entirely. But healing doesn't work that way. Love can support healing, can create safe space for it, but it can't replace the hard work of learning to value yourself. "I know," Iris says. "I started therapy last week. It's terrifying and uncomfortable, and I cried through the entire first session, but I'm doing it. I'm trying to see myself the way you see me, or at least to stop seeing myself through Tyler's eyes." Caleb's smile is proud and tender all at once. "That's incredible, Iris. Really, I'm proud of you." "And I contacted the gallery," she continues, the words tumbling out in a rush of confession. "I told them I want to do the show. I'm going to stand in a room full of strangers and let them see my face and my art and make the connection between the two. And I'm absolutely terrified, but I'm doing it anyway because you were right. My art is powerful because of what I've survived, not in spite of it. And hiding that truth isn't protecting me anymore. It's just keeping me small." But here's the question neither of them voices aloud yet. Can Iris actually follow through when the moment arrives, or will old fears resurface and convince her to retreat back into safety? The conversation shifts to easier topics after that. Caleb's conference, Iris's new art pieces, the weather, anything to ease the intensity of the moment. But underneath the casual talk, there's a new understanding between them. An acknowledgement that they're both choosing this, both willing to try, both aware that love, real love, requires more than just feeling. It requires courage and commitment, and the willingness to be vulnerable even when vulnerability feels like standing naked in a spotlight. Over the next 3 weeks, Iris and Caleb rebuild their relationship on more honest foundation. They go on actual dates, restaurants and movies and walks through the park, and each time, Iris is a little less covered, a little more present, a little braver. Caleb shows her more of his photography, including his newest project, a series called Resilient Beauty, featuring people who've survived trauma. He asks if she'd be willing to be photographed for it, and after a long moment of internal struggle, Iris agrees. The photo session happens in Caleb's apartment on a Sunday afternoon. Natural light streaming through windows, no heavy makeup or strategic angles, just Iris as she is, while Caleb moves around her with his camera, murmuring gentle encouragement. Turn your head slightly, yes, just like that, beautiful. Iris's instinct is to argue, to deflect, to say she's not beautiful, but she's learning to sit with the compliment instead of rejecting it, learning that Caleb's perception is just as valid as her own harsh self-judgment. Maybe more so because it's not filtered through trauma and shame. When Caleb shows her the photos afterward, Iris braces herself for the usual wave of disgust and grief. But what she sees in those images surprises her. Yes, her scars are visible. They'll always be visible. But they're not the only thing she sees. She sees strength in the set of her jaw, vulnerability in her eyes, the face of someone who has survived something terrible and is still standing, still creating, still daring to hope. "Is this really how you see me?" she asks, voice hushed with wonder. Every day, Caleb confirms, "That's how I've always seen you." And for the first time, Iris begins to believe him. Not just intellectually, but in that deep place where beliefs about self-worth either grow or wither. She's starting to understand that beauty isn't about symmetry or perfection or meeting society's arbitrary standards. Beauty is about authenticity, about vulnerability, about the courage to exist fully in a world that wants to categorize and dismiss anything that doesn't fit its narrow definitions. The night of the gallery opening arrives faster than Iris expects. She stands in her apartment, dressed in a simple black dress that she chose specifically because it doesn't hide anything. No high collars, no strategic draping, just her in fabric that makes her feel elegant and exposed all at once. Her scars are visible. Her face is visible. And this time, when she looks in the mirror, she doesn't immediately look away. "You can do this," she tells her reflection. "You've survived worse. You're doing this." But when she arrives at the gallery, the reality hits her like a physical wall. The space is already filling with people. Art enthusiasts, collectors, critics, the curious. Everyone will see her. Everyone will make the connection between the anonymous artist they've been following online and the scarred woman standing before them. Everyone will stare. Iris's feet freeze at the entrance. Her breathing becomes shallow. Fight or flight kicks in and flight is winning, whispering that she can turn around right now, that nobody's seen her yet, that she can go home and send a message saying she got sick, that hiding is always safer than being seen. And then Caleb appears beside her. She didn't even know he'd arrived, but suddenly he's there, solid and steady and real. He doesn't grab her hand or force her forward or give her a motivational speech. He just stands there, present, and asks quietly, "Do you want to leave?" It's the question that changes everything, because Caleb isn't pushing her, isn't making this about what he wants or what he thinks she should do. He's giving her agency, reminding her that this is her choice, that she has the power to decide whether to walk through that door or turn around. "No," Iris says, and she's surprised to hear certainty in her voice. "No, I don't want to leave. I want to do this." "Then I'm right beside you," Caleb promises. The whole time, they walk in together. And yes, people turn to look. Yes, there are stares and whispers. But there are also gasps of appreciation at her art displayed on pristine white walls. There are people gravitating toward her pieces, reading the descriptions, connecting with the raw emotion captured in each illustration. And slowly, Iris realizes something profound. Most people are looking at her art first and her face second. And those who do focus on her scars seem moved rather than repulsed, seeing in her physical survival a mirror of the emotional survival depicted in her work. A woman in her 50s approaches Iris, eyes bright with tears. "Are you the artist?" Iris swallows hard. This is it, the moment of truth. "Yes, I'm Iris. Your work is stunning," the woman says. "My daughter was in an accident 2 years ago. She has scars similar to yours. She's been hiding ever since, won't leave the house, won't see friends. But when I saw your art, saw you here tonight." She wipes at her eyes. "Would you mind if I introduced her to your work? I think she needs to see that survival can be beautiful." And Iris realizes in that moment that her visibility isn't just about her own healing. It's about showing other people who carry scars, visible or invisible, that they're not alone. That survival is worth celebrating. That trauma doesn't have to be the end of the story. "I'd be honored," Iris tells the woman, meaning every word. The evening unfolds in a blur of conversations and introductions and unexpected validation. A collector purchases 3 pieces. A magazine wants to interview her about her artistic process. Other artists with similar stories seek her out, creating instant connections forged in shared understanding. But the most important moment happens when Iris spots someone across the room who makes her blood run cold. Tyler, her ex-boyfriend, the man whose rejection convinced her she was unlovable. He's here, probably saw the event posted online, probably curious about what became of the girlfriend he abandoned. Iris's first instinct is panic, but then Caleb's hand finds hers, squeezes gently, grounding her. And Iris realizes something crucial. Tyler doesn't matter anymore. His opinion, his rejection, his inability to see past surfaces, none of it defines her worth. She's not the broken girl in the hospital bed anymore. She's an artist with a successful show, a woman who's done the hard work of healing, a survivor who chose courage over comfort. Tyler approaches, looking uncomfortable and almost ashamed. "Iris, I saw the announcement online. Your art is incredible. I'm happy for you." Iris looks at him, really looks at him, and feels nothing but indifference tinged with pity. This man who once held so much power over her self-perception now seems small, shallow, incapable of the depth that real love requires. "Thank you," she says simply. Then, with Caleb beside her radiating quiet support, "I need to get back to my guests. Take care, Tyler." She walks away without looking back. In that moment, she's not just walking away from Tyler. She's walking away from the version of herself who believed his rejection was proof of her unworthiness. She's walking away from the shame and self-hatred and limiting beliefs that kept her trapped for 4 years. She's walking toward a future that she's choosing for herself. Later, when the gallery has emptied and Iris and Caleb are walking through the city streets under lamplight, Caleb asks, "How do you feel?" "Exhausted," Iris admits. "Overwhelmed, terrified, proud. All of it at once." "That sounds about right for facing your biggest fear and coming out the other side," Caleb says with a smile. They stop at a bench overlooking the river, sitting close but not quite touching, existing in that comfortable space between friendship and romance that they've been carefully rebuilding. The city lights reflect on the water, turning it into liquid gold. "I need to tell you something," Iris says, turning to face Caleb fully. "That night when you almost kissed me and I ran, I wasn't running from you. I was running from the possibility that I might actually deserve to be loved. Because if I deserved it, then Tyler's rejection wasn't about my worth, it was about his shallowness. And all these years of hiding and hating myself would have been unnecessary. A choice instead of an inevitability. And now," Caleb asks gently, "now I'm starting to believe that maybe I deserve good things. That my scars don't disqualify me from love or happiness or success. That I'm worthy exactly as I am." Iris pauses, gathering courage for what she needs to say next. "And I'm starting to believe that you genuinely care about me, not because you pity me or want to save me, but because you actually see something worth caring about." Caleb takes her hand, intertwining their fingers. I more than care about you, Iris. I love you. I've loved you for months, and the first am willing to take this as slowly as you need, to give you whatever time and space you require. But I need you to know, you're not a project to me. You're not someone I'm trying to fix. You're the woman I want to build a life with, if you'll let me. The words settle over Iris like a benediction. And this time, when Caleb leans in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, Iris doesn't run. She closes the distance between them instead, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that tastes like hope and healing, and the brave choice to be vulnerable with someone who's proven himself trustworthy. When they pull apart, Iris is crying, but they're happy tears this time, the kind that wash away old pain instead of creating new wounds. I love you too, she whispers against his lips. And I'm terrified, but I'm choosing this anyway. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Because that's what healing really looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to act despite it. Not perfection, but progress. Not erasing your scars, but learning to wear them as proof of survival rather than symbols of shame. In the weeks and months that follow, Iris continues building a life that looks nothing like the isolated existence she maintained for 4 years. She goes to therapy weekly. She accepts more gallery opportunities. She starts teaching online classes for trauma survivors who want to express themselves through art. She reconnects with her parents, visiting them and letting them see how far she's come. She even reaches out to a few old friends, not to resurrect relationships that weren't meant to survive, but to practice vulnerability with people who remember who she was before the accident. And through it all, Caleb is there, not as her savior or her therapist, but as her partner. Someone who celebrates her victories and holds space for her struggles without trying to fix everything. Someone who loves her on the hard days when old fears resurface, and on the good days when she feels genuinely happy. Someone who proves through consistent action that love isn't about perfect faces or unblemished skin. It's about seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. 1 year after that first gallery show, Iris stands in her studio apartment, the same space that once felt like a prison, and takes stock of her transformation. The mirrors are uncovered. The curtains are open. Her art fills the walls. Photos of her and Caleb together are displayed on her desk. And when she looks at her reflection, she sees a woman who survived, who healed, who learned that her worth was never tied to her appearance. Her scars are still there. They'll always be there. But now, when Iris looks at them, she sees evidence of resilience. Proof that she's stronger than the things that tried to break her. A map of a journey from brokenness to wholeness that she had to travel to become the person she was always meant to be. And she understands now what Caleb tried to tell her all those months ago at the coffee shop. The most beautiful things are often the ones society overlooks. Not despite their imperfections, but because of them. Because survival itself is beautiful. Because choosing to keep existing in a world that hurt you is an act of radical courage. Because scars, physical or emotional, are simply proof that you were stronger than whatever tried to destroy you. So, here's my question for you. What scars are you hiding? What parts of yourself have you deemed unworthy of love because someone else couldn't see your value? And what would happen if you chose, just for today, to believe that you're deserving exactly as you are, not in spite of your perceived flaws, but because of everything you've survived? Because Iris's story isn't just about one woman learning to love herself after trauma. It's about the fundamental truth that we all need to hear. You are not broken. You are not too much, or too little, or too damaged, or too anything. You are worthy of love, of connection, of happiness, of all the beautiful things that life has to offer. And the person whose opinion matters most isn't the one who rejected you or the society that sets impossible standards. It's you. You get to decide if you're worthy. And I hope you choose to believe that you are. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think differently about beauty or worth or survival, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me, what's one thing you're going to stop hiding? What's one step you're going to take toward believing in your own worthiness? Because your story matters just as much as Iris's. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is share it. Let's build a community of people who understand that true beauty comes from within, that scars tell stories worth hearing, and that everyone deserves to be loved exactly as they are. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in love stories that celebrate healing over perfection, and share this with someone who needs to hear that they're worthy today. Now go out there and choose courage over comfort, vulnerability over safety, and love over fear. You deserve it.